So the last film that I'm going to talk about in my Tribeca from home coverage for the year 2026 is I Spy with My Little Eye. It is a German film that has been directed by Alisa Kolosova. It's a film about three women friends, three female friends, out of whom one dies by suicide. So the film opens and we are introduced to this group of three female friends, Solveig, Lou, and Yalda. Now, Lou and Yalda are the ones who are left behind when you know, Solveig dies by suicide. And honestly, it's a film that deals with a heavy theme, right? It deals with the theme of eating disorders, with themes of self harm and suicide, and uh, it also deals with the theme of female solidarity, right, and women standing up for each other. So, what it seems like initially is that you know when I first started watching the film, that is what I felt, and I'm assuming that is what a lot of viewers would also feel. That that the film is building up towards towards us learning the reason behind Solveig's suicide and why Solveig took the kind of drastic step that she took, what made her take that step. But the film does not get into the minute details and it does not explore those reasons with the kind of depth that we would expect, and that's not a bad thing, right? Because of course there are a lot of hints as to why Solveig could have taken that step. We know that Solveig had a very complicated relationship with her mother, that her mother to a large extent was abusive towards her, and she was you know really mean in a lot of occasions, especially when Solveig was a kid. And Yalda and Lou, both of them were quite aware of this toxic dynamic that Solveig shares with her mother. Uh, Yalda and Lou were also aware about Solveig's pregnancy, about a man who did not take responsibility of his child, and Solveig was forced to take that responsibility alone. And there is also a reason that Solveig had a condition that she was struggling with, and because of that condition, also you know presumably that condition is one of the many reasons why she chose to end her life, right? But none of these reasons matter in the way that we think they would matter. They matter because we are made to sit with Yalda and Lou as they clean Solveig's apartment, as they get everything in order, as they arrange her apartment, and as you know they arrange for the funeral, right? So we see Yalda and Lou are two friends who are grieving. They are mourning the loss of a friend who was so dear to them, and you know they are simultaneously making all the necessary arrangements, and simultaneously they are also trying to you know remember Solveig, right, and their friendship. So I think Yalda and Lou are polar opposites, right? In the way that Yalda is, she's the kind of, woman who is very cold and very practical, and she's very rooted in reality, as opposed to Lou, who sometimes can be very idealistic, who can be very carefree, and sometimes she can be carefree and she can also just wing it and see how. So let's say if these three friends went to plan a trip, right? I think Yalda is the one who would get everything in order down to the last detail, while Lou is the carefree idealist friend who would just go with the flow, right? So these two school of thoughts stand in stark opposition with each other, and Yalda and Lou, therefore, we do see them having, you know, this conflict. I don't know if conflict is the right word to use, but they do have a little bit of a cold vibe going on, not just before Solveig's suicide, but also after Solveig's passing. We do see that, Lou and Yalda have a complicated relationship. So a lot of the film is, it's not even about what made Solveig take the step that she took, and it's not even about you know Yalda and Lou. It's about what happens when you lose a friend, right? How do you cope with that loss? How do you feel? How do you get how do you get to accept, how do you get yourself to accept that something like that has happened? And the most painful bit here, which I have not talked about yet, is that Solveig also has a daughter. And now Lou and Yalda are in this predicament where both of them want custody, right? And in fact, Lou at one point does not want custody. And Yalda, unfortunately, she cannot get the custody because she's a researcher and she does not have a stable income. And the Child Protection Services would actually want, you know, Solveig's daughter to go to someone who has financial security. So there is a particular. I've already talked a lot about the film, and I don't want to reveal major plot twists. But there is a sacrificial act by Yalda that really moved me to tears. She compromised on a movement in her career over sheltering a child, and that is a really noble thought. And from someone who's as cold and practical and rooted in reality, and who's very, I would say, sure of what she wants, I did not expect Yalda to make that move, and for her to even make that move, that's great. The film has a lot of flashbacks where we learn about the complicated dynamics between these three women. I think, there is one particular reveal which I personally feel could have been handled better, and that reveal is about Solveig's condition that she suffers from. It is told to the viewers in a matter of fact manner, right? And I just, I wish we had a narrative that built up to that reveal. I wish the narrative, kind of allowed us to, just figure that out slowly and steadily instead of it being presented to us as a fact or as an information that we are supposed to digest. So I think it was meant to be shocking. It was meant to be more like a plot twist, but I think it could have been more emotionally impactful if it was not something that was revealed in a matter of fact manner, and if it was something that was more layered, that was more nuanced, and that had more depth to it. And possibly, if we, and of course, Solveig has diabetes, she is diabetic, so you know that she struggles with food. That's not something that we are not aware of. So again, I just wish that reveal was better handled. uh, I think the film has a lot of montages where we see these three young girls spend time with each other, and you just know that Solveig comes from an unhappy family, from an unhappy household, and Yalda and Lou, both of them try to cheer Solveig up on that front as much as they can. Lou, I do feel sometimes as a character can be very reckless and sometimes can be perhaps unintentionally or intentionally insensitive with her comments, because I did notice when, I'm thinking all of us saw when she passed a few comments which were not the best, right? And they were not the most sensitive things to say to a friend who is struggling with her body, who's struggling with food, right? So I think, that aspect also was something that I noticed, and we do see that growth in Lou now that she's a grown woman. We do see her be relatively more empathetic and calmer. So definitely that aspect really, that really comes through to the viewer. The mother, on the other hand, I was really hoping that at some point Lou and Yalda would yell at Solveig's mother and just tell her how horrible she's been. Because I don't know, maybe that was just me wanting the film to go a certain way, right? But that doesn't happen. Of course, that's the director's choice, and in no way does it affect the film. But I would have loved to see that happen because Solveig has died by suicide, and the only thing that this Solveig's mother can think of is who's going to take care of me, which is again a very selfish thing to think of when there is a child that Solveig has left behind, and the needs of that child have not been met, right? uh, I just feel one critique, if I had to give about this film, is that I just wish that uh, it was more emotional and more moving, right? I wasn't as moved as I expected that I would be moved, because it's a film about mental illness. There have been so many narratives about mental health illness. Think about After Sun, Charlotte Wells. I think that was a narrative, that was a film that I saw, and I cried for at least a few days after watching it, because that is how personally, and that is how much it moved me. So I just wish that this film was a little more moving, right? A little more affecting, a little more, I would say, high on emotion. But whatever I have seen, it really works really well. And I wouldn't say that this is not a really good attempt by the director, because it very much is. And props to them for that. And with this, my Tribeca watch has ended. This was the final review. I have reviewed four other films besides I Spy with My Little Eye. I have reviewed Memorizu. I have reviewed Mother Future Self. I have reviewed uh, the other two films that I have reviewed are also on my channel. I think one of them is obviously Labrador, Autopsy of Silence, and then there's one more film that I have reviewed, Sad Girls. So it took me a while to recollect. So the reviews for all these five films are now live on my YouTube channel. And how was Tribeca 2026 for you? Are you a critic? Did you attend it, or are you a filmmaker? What was the experience like for you? Sound off in the comments below, and please watch the space for more, because I keep covering international film festivals on this channel. And yeah, stay tuned, and I will see you soon. Hopefully, take care. Bye bye.